Thank you all for being here for my conversation with Brad Keywell. Brad, we were joking earlier this week that we can probably skip the platitudes. We do not need to spend your time today telling us the same thing that everyone has been saying these past few months. So I'm just going to hit on the top 5 that we can all agree to, and then we can have a really insightful conversation.
Yep.
Things are not going back to how they were. Covered. In some ways, COVID has been the great accelerator, and many companies have been forced to innovate. Some are coming out stronger, some not. This pandemic has been very humanizing on a number of levels. Bosses have been humanized to their employees. They're seeing them as real people with, messy lives. And at the same time, bosses are seeing their people as more than ideal workers, right? Who also have things that they need to balance in their lives, combined with the murder of George Floyd with a heightened emphasis on diversity and inclusion of their teams. 4, many people are reevaluating their wants, needs, priorities, and values in this moment. And then 5, for many knowledge workers and professional services, they have proven that they can work remotely, but we do have others who rely heavily on hands-on collaboration who have been hindered, and still others, low-wage workers, essential workers, who have not had this benefit of working from home. So we don't need to talk about those things. Let's get into some really big, important stuff. So there's been a lot of hype around the IT transformation that's happened seemingly overnight, in the digital transformation that is predicted to happen in the next 18 months. But as you and I talked earlier, there are 2 critical aspects of this that have not been given as much attention that we want to dig in together. So first, why didn't this happen earlier? And what are the implications of understanding that going forward? And then second, what are the crucial elements of digital transformation that remain undone, and what are the barriers? So let's get into it. For those of you who are not already aware, Brad is a serial tech entrepreneur, philanthropist, author, art enthusiast, proud Chicagoan. I won't list all of his major accomplishments now, just Google him. You can read a lot about him. But before we begin, Brad, can you tell everyone a little bit about Uptake, which is your latest company?
Sure. Phil, thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to join you, Margaret. Uptake is a system of industrial intelligence for both assets and operators around the world in the industrial infrastructure and related sort of manufacturing space. What we provide to our customers through software is improved reliability, improved productivity, and often improved environmental outcomes and safety outcomes. What's interesting to note in relation to Uptake is the spectacular lack of use, leverage, and harnessing of data that exists in the industrial world, sort of globally. Yet these industrial companies undisputedly are our drivers of growth. And more than ever, I think the recognition that we can't outsource manufacturing and industrial excellence. That's something that is within our grasp, and it's important for all of us who are in businesses that have a relationship to assets, to machines, to supply chain activity, and assets, be them mobile assets or fixed assets, that it's no longer sort of a possibility. It's, I think, veering in towards the responsibility to take advantage of precision-based activity and proactive operations, and not be either reactive or passive in how we choose to operate. So that's who we are. And we are a couple quick examples. We help utilities and energy companies better optimize and get more productivity out of their wind turbines and grids and other assets that are part of energy creation and delivery. And then another example is the locomotive and rail space. We are one of the leading providers globally of proactive, predictive insights, so that the activity of operating a railroad and running locomotives, et cetera, is optimized with more throughput, more reliability, and ultimately more safety by the operators.
We're going to talk about a lot of those things today. And I forgot to mention to everyone, this will be interactive. So use the Q&A box at the bottom to submit your questions. You can also chat, I think. I'm not sure if that function's working. Try to not use that because we may not be following that as much. Put it in the Q&A and we're going to get to as many of them as we can during our conversation. So as the COVID outbreak sent most businesses scrambling to get their employees fully functional in a remote working environment, some long-standing tech priorities got implemented within days. Networking software, cloud security protocols, video conferencing, online collaboration tools, those are now in place at nearly every company, including like my little nonprofit, right? We did it overnight. So what tools have you seen that have emerged in this moment that have had such huge promise for increased productivity and revenue that we just didn't do and should have done way earlier?
Well, we've all seen, I think what you raise, Margaret, in pointing out that fact of us humans all effectively digitizing our communication and our interaction as teams, the ability to so quickly change everything from a communication standpoint is pretty profound. What it thankfully leverages is, not just years but decades of progress around IT. So information technology, sharing information, whether it's verbally shared or shared through writing, technology has been created that lets us deliver information reliably. And that same information, if you just try to distinguish information as a thing, which is different from operations. So that information technology evolution became revolutionary when it was needed, which was amazing and has been amazing. So the value that it's unleashed, it lets us still collaborate, create, interact, decide, meet. And in the case of Uptake, for example, we now have all hands meetings twice a week. The choice of that mode of communication and the increased velocity communication wouldn't be possible if it weren't for video conferencing and the like. So that's all known. What's interesting to me is the operational technology distinction. So OT and IT are two different things. Mm-hmm. And while OT might not be on the tip of our tongues, it is an absolute thing that is part of our world and has been. In fact, operational technology is at the root of this concept of industrial revolution. The second and the third industrial revolution are both more about OT than anything else. So the IT aspects is secondary. All this being said, what now is available to us in terms of value creation or else value creating reaction to COVID and the conditions that the pandemic imposes upon us is radical progress that's definitively led in the world of OT, operational technology. And we can talk about a lot of different flavors of this, but it's just not historically or even currently in the operational toolkit, or at least operationally oriented in most companies under the CTO or CIO. Those are both functions around information versus operations.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that, sort of what role those individuals play. So the heart of what I want to get into right now is, why did it take a global pandemic for some of this to happen? What were either the overt or maybe just latent barriers to this happening sooner?
The question begs, I think, an exploration of human beings and motivations to do or not do. No coincidence, I suppose, or fortuitously, we're here in Chicago, and we're blocks or a mile or two from the home of behavioral economics globally. Mm-hmm. The question of why somebody doesn't do what they can do is a question, and what's really available, easy, and actionable to do is a question of what are the incentives and what nudges are put in place so that the default is good action versus no action or reaction, or better, so that the default is proaction versus passive action, no action, reaction, etc. Why didn't it happen sooner? I think that the chain of command over operations might have been exposed to the possibility that comes from proactive, predictive, more precision-based operations, and the available profit, efficiency, reliability from using data to be more precisely active in operation of the business. But there wasn't really the understanding, perhaps, at a board level, at a leadership level, about what this possibility really looks like and feels like when it's deployed. And therefore, those in a position to act didn't. And that's part of why I say the biggest competitor that Uptake has historically has been inertia. We've established and demonstrated on a global basis superiority and insight in a pretty wide variety of industrial components and industrial assets, so that if you use Uptake to oversee and fundamentally confirm the productivity and reliability of these assets, we give you insight that you can act on very tangibly that makes you better, makes you more money, makes you have less expense. That you've chosen to not do it is really interesting. It's because you've chosen inertia. And we can talk about why, but it's a pretty interesting, it's worth a guy like Thaler or Dubner or somebody at UFC. It'd be a pretty interesting question to explore. Why does an industrial operational leader or decision maker not decide to do something when a decision actually could be rewarding and productive and positive?
What's your hypothesis?
Well, I think most people are more driven by incentives, by reward, than fear. And so it's easier if there's no reward or incentive, and therefore taking action might disrupt the status quo, and that might cause you to be socially less accepted, or maybe be not consistent with everybody else, and that sort of, here's what's happening now, that you're more likely as a human being, if there's no incentive available, to just do nothing. You might call it laziness, or you might call it ignorance, or you might call it choosing to do nothing. But that choice, unless, I would frame I would basically, what I believe is most productive is saying, this is available. If you use it and act on it, you can, as part of your role, be better for yourself, for the company. You can upskill your own acumen, and you can create a safer, more environmentally friendly operation with more productivity and less waste. And that equals this much money, and your board and your leadership will reward you for it. Therefore, are you willing to be the actor? Versus, no one's talking about it, so hopefully you'll do something, but if not, it's okay.
Right, because if it's not in your goals and your plan, you're not going to get fired for sticking to your plan and doing what you said you were going to do. But you could be taking a risk and digging into what aren't we doing and looking at investments, but that's not getting incentivized or rewarded.
Yeah, I mean, it's more like, why
keeping the train going.
Yeah, I mean, why do humans prefer to avoid risk versus explore reward? Because it's, I don't know. I mean, that's a whole field of study, but I think it manifests itself now more than ever in the face of COVID. Those who are in any industrial or supply chain, transportation, asset-related activity, it's worth a board, a CEO, a CFO, a COO, boldly walking into the space of technology, knowing that it's OT, it's operational technology, not IT, and 8th grade level questions are the right questions. Why not? I don't understand. Help me understand why we're choosing to do things that we've done it, 5, 10 years ago. Why are we not modifying, taking advantage of, acting upon, leveraging? Those are questions that are not just appropriate, I think they're important to ask right now.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to get back to these things in just a minute. I want to now look forward to all of the digital transformation that is predicted to be happening over the next 12 to 24 months, right? Everyone's writing about it, talking about it. I think it's even the title of our talk here today, this great acceleration. What aspects of digital transformation that have such promise have you seen companies just really sitting on these last few years that you think are going to happen first and have the greatest promise?
what's most visible to me, so first of all, what I've seen in the last 6 months has been a crisper, clearer sense of leadership, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of position or role-based, by COOs and CFOs. Yes, by CEOs who are giving them either license, mandate, permission. We'll talk about the board later, but the activity of operators who are interested in making things better versus just a technologist who wants to keep things working has emerged, number one. Number two is the clarity that while technology in an IT sense is about keeping things going and safe, the understanding that technology can actually make you better, make you more money, save you money that has tangible money. That's something that's not a familiar thought as relates to technology. Our technologists don't have a revenue goal or a cost savings goal. They're an expense for most companies. Now I tell you, technologists in the world of operational technology can make you money and save you money and make you more reliable and make you more productive. So that's one. Two is I've seen functionally an activity towards data integrity, a foundation of data integrity, actionable data integrity that sort of creates the foundation that enables and opens up this world of machine learning, AI, and predictive precision insight. That's where it starts, is a leader deciding we must have a foundation of data, and I, as a leader, must know what data is available to me. It's not okay to tell me what I have and not allow and not be clear about what I don't have, that I could have. So this idea of we could be doing this, but we're choosing not to. That probably wasn't even asked before, but this pause we're in, what else is worth asking? I mean, the thing worth asking is how much more can I do with what I have? I have machines, there's a bunch of things that are part of our company. People, machines, customers. What more can I do without more hardcore, large-scale capital expense? How much more can I get out of those wind turbines? Well, is a wind turbine maker really the right person to ask? It'd be like asking, a car company to tell me what you haven't done in terms of the warranty. Just send me all the information about how you've not made me happy. So why would you think that any different in the industry?
Right.
Call the company you bought it from. They're like, oh, we're doing a great job. What's your check and balance? What's your source of asking an 8th grade level question, which is my phrase for like, it's that simple for you to say, I don't get it. Tell me what else I could be doing that I'm choosing not to. And that simple question, I find, opens up outrageous amounts of possibility, profit, productivity, and more.
So why don't CEOs ask that more until now?
My belief structurally is if you study the theory of business, okay? The theory of business, I mean, look at, it is what it is. We are where we are, which is we have boards that are constructed with 3 main committees, generally an audit committee, a nominating and governance committee, and a compensation committee. Where's the operations committee? Well, it doesn't exist. Why? Well, it's assumed that the board members are going to have operational acumen, are going to sort of interact with the CEO around ops. Interesting. So then where's my cybersecurity committee or oversight? Well, that's a new thing. We'll put it under audit. That's where it lives right now. How about my data integrity activity? Because cybersecurity is somebody taking my stuff. How about the integrity of the data upon which I make decisions? So just let's assume cyber is fine. How about just data enhanced, monetizing data, leveraging data, and ensuring that data is in integrity? Oh, we'll put that under audit. My belief is that what we're talking about is this is what a blind spot looks like. And the blind spot around operational excellence and data integrity that helps the whole company truly be this data-driven organization is a blind spot that it's time to address it. And the fact that there has been no clear articulation of mandate around leveraging data taking advantage of available data by a board, by a CEO. Why hasn't it been? Well, it hasn't, and it's because it is a blind spot. Blind spots show up in lots of different ways. What does it look like that it hasn't been? In the oil and gas industry, there's a confirmed amount of research that gives you clarity. Literally about 1% of available data is even captured, let alone used. What would happen if we use more? Well, the leading companies are distinguishing themselves now by using, well, first of all, establishing a data integrity foundation and using data. So in 10, 20, 30 years, you'd say economically, how does it play out? Companies go away if they're not taking advantage of precision-oriented operations versus reactive or passive operations, but that's going to take time. But it's going to show up because you're going to have boards that adopt or create data integrity committees. You're going to have CEOs who distinguish themselves based upon precision activity, who make technology choices that functionally separate operational technology from IT and have a profit or cost reduction or improvement incentive and motive on your OT activity that says, my IT folks are about keeping things safe and working. My OT folks are about finding money, profit, productivity, reliability. That's an operational outcome, profit-making outcome versus just a sustainment outcome.
But you said something that I think is so important. We traditionally see those things as cost centers, right? Even where they are on the financial statements. Like, this is an expense, this is overhead. This, like, it's not seen as an investment for revenue. It's not treated the same way as a sales budget or a marketing budget, right?
I mean, look, let's go back to Thaler. We're giving University of Chicago a lot of airtime today, but a Nobel Prize gets you something. So let's use Richard Thaler and say, what's the nudge? What's the default? How do we talk to each other in the Global 2000 and beyond? Businesses that involve manufacturing, operations, assets, transportation, supply chain. Well, here's what I know we rarely hear. Something like, we could do X, it would have Y impact, it would have Z profit or cost savings impact, and we choose not to. So it almost be saying, let's have conversations saying, here's what we could do right now. And I want you to know we are choosing, this is a CEO to a board, I'm choosing to not do it. That would be, to me, that at least the board saying, just for the sake of understanding, can you let us know all the things that technology would allow us to do right now that we are choosing not to do? Because that simple question allows a more easeful conversation about, you're choosing to not take advantage of that. What about you thinks that we're too busy to do it? Or what about you thinks that it's too risky to be better? Because the question becomes like, is it really risky to become a more data enhanced, proactive company? The risk, we're through the hype cycle now of, uptake has established itself as one of the global leaders. And what you're seeing in the space of industrial intelligence is the thousands of companies that have gotten funded in a small way are dropping to the side. And leaders are now emerging. Hype cycle is over. It's now no longer, it never was sexy. It's now not sexy at all. It's simply doing the work of being better, which is low drama, low risk, no rip and replace. We're not believers in rip and replace, and we're not believers in huge consulting engagements. What we make just works. We're not alone. And you plug it in and it makes you better. There's no drama. And that capability is more new than old. And now it's time for a CEO to explore, why is it that I haven't done it, but we're actually seeing more do it now than ever.
So this whole exercise you just went through is looking at all of these OT and other types of technology investments. What are we choosing not to do, at what cost, and why? Whose mandate is that? Like, in corporate speak, who's the D? Like, whose job is this?
Well, that's the blind spot. So you would say digitization of life, digitization of we'll speak with what I know best right now. Digitization of industry, global industry, historically doesn't have a clear owner. Why? Because that IT function is one that's shared across an organization, but your profit and loss operational activity is generally a vertical activity. And so it's sort of like, well, the verticals make money, but you know what? That IT thing, we'll just share that. It's, but it's just an expense. You just reallocate it around. So what does that mean? Who owns what? And by the way, the whole point of having a business that has multiple activities should be some leverage. Well, what uptake delivers is leverage. Leverage based upon what you know and what you do and the scope and scale of all the things you do. And your buying power should be a source of leverage in terms of maintenance and calibration for more productivity. But the clarity that I'm most passionate about is the clarity that operations is not information. I mean, it involves information, but in a lowercase I. Information is a capitalized term under a traditional CTO function. There's not currently, well, there are in the leading organizations. It's not yet clear what the title would be, but there are now emerging to be people with a profit incentive and an incentive structure who are asked to take data, make sure it's available and right, that it's maintained appropriately in integrity, which technically is data. It's time-oriented, so it can be leveraged with precision around insight, machine learning, AI. That there's a profit incentive, an operational incentive for an owner that likely reports to a COO or a CFO. And the mandate would come from the CEO, and ideally the board cares. Is the data that we're acting on even right? And by the way, how rich and timely and available is data in our company? Almost everyone I've ever seen, the answer is, oh my goodness, I can't believe how hard it is to get accurate information in this company. So how are we going to make decisions that are daily about refining our activity to be better? So, and why does it all matter? Because you don't need to build another factory, put another line in, put another turbine out to add full percentage points, hundreds of basis points of productivity and output to your company. You just need to take advantage of technology that now exists and can be deployed easily.
And everyone, keep the questions coming. I want to get through just a few things, and then we'll get to all the Q&A. We have a bunch in there. So I'm curious, do you go through this kind of explicit process as the CEO of Uptake? Are you this explicit about the analysis of what you are choosing not to do and why? And if so, can you give us like a very specific example of something that you did?
I'm pretty explicit about, I would tell you my, one of my strongest suits is curiosity and an interest in learning versus an interest in telling you how much I know. I'd rather tell you how much I want to learn than tell you how much I know. In that spirit, what I'm interested in is mental models of learning. And you asked about like how explicit am I at Uptake? I'm very explicit about exploring what are our first principles. It's a physics concept, but I think it's one I've learned from some very successful leaders. It challenges you to say, what is inevitably, unarguably true that we base our decisions on? So one truth is we believe that less people isolated in action is more productive than more people. In other words, committees, like more people doesn't create safety, it creates drag. Doesn't mean that means get rid of people. It means articulate activity in a way that gives more ownership to groups that are smaller and enable them to do what they do. That's first principle. Another first principle is everything that we do must be connected to everything else we do. Easily, clearly, with an API mentality, meaning it should be outrageously easy internally at Uptake to understand who does what, how it relates to me and what I do, and how we can interact with each other without having to talk to each other. So asynchronous connectivity is a core concept. What it leads to, Margaret, to your question, is choice. Like everything we do or don't do is a choice, and by looking at not doing something as much of a choice as doing something, I find it an empowering. I think for some it might be scary.
Yeah.
They might be defensive to say, I'm not doing these things. Am I bad? Am I wrong? Is there something wrong with me? I look at it opposite by saying we are not doing these 5 things. We are all clear now because we know we're not ignoring them. We're choosing to not do them. And if you're wondering why, that's a great question. Why? Let me explain why. And the more questions that can be answered, the better every person at Uptake, not just us, but our customers, our deployment partners, and more, all can understand who we are, why we do what we do, and where it all goes. And it only starts when you can actually say, these are my blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
These are the ones I know. Are there others that you know? These are my first principles that I believe in. So if you're wondering why it is that we have less meetings than other companies do, it's because we believe meetings are great until they're not great. So let's make sure that when we meet as a team or small teams, we are clear about the goals and that we are crisp meters. It's just the interest is learning and improving across the board, with passion.
I mean, this moment has many gifts in it, right? I mean, I think a lot of people are having this awakening to things like this. I mean, even just a little bit off topic, like leadership and leading teams, this has really been a remedial lesson in leadership 101 for a lot of people too. Like this idea of we need to over communicate, we need to check in. It's like, these are all things we should have been doing pre-pandemic. And it took, this for us to realize that we need to just get back to those basic building blocks, the blocking and tackling of, running our companies and our teams. So
piggybacking on that, it's an interesting thought to say, okay, we've removed a lot of friction. Why? It's been removed from us. Friction might be commuting. Friction might be going from one room to another, which takes 5 minutes or whatever, or people walking by interrupting us, let's say.
Right.
Those are all friction things. And therefore, we are more clear now that what we do literally is we choose what we do all day long. And it's more sort of, to me at least, it's more tangible. Like that, we're in a Zoom right now with a lot of people, and we're all going to go to another Zoom or have quiet time or do whatever we do. It's a little bit more precise now than it was before. So we can actually say, is this the best use of my time? Am I adding value? Or am I giving value or deriving value? And the pause on Earth right now on a relative, I think we're in a relative more than ever pause.
Yeah.
The environment's taking a deep breath in some places and cleaning itself up a little bit, tiny bit. We are all sort of able to reflect a little bit on our families and friends and relationships, and at a company level, nonprofit or profit, we're all saying, how are we?
Yeah.
How should we be? All of that to me creates opportunity and possibility as long as we can slow down and listen.
Right. This gift of this ability to have intentionality in what we're doing instead of just, inertia, momentum. So I want to unpack a little bit. So some terms get thrown around a lot, and we think we know what they mean. Tell us, what does it mean to truly be a data-driven organization?
Let me do it by analogy.
Yeah.
Whatever your opinions are about politics, military, war, etc., let's just agree, to fight a war, you have to know what's going on. I don't think anybody would choose, I'm going to fight a war and just sort of have a feel for it. I mean, you want to know where your troops are, where other troops are, whether you got the right supplies, blah, blah, blah. And therefore, in relation to that activity, you've seen war rooms be created. What's in the war? Like, we'll go to Churchill's War Room in London. If you go there, if you take a tour of that small underground facility, what you see is rooms with data on the walls that show everything. And this is in the 40s, updated with the best information at all times so that you can sit in a room, look around and see everything you got to see to make a decision. That is as state of the art as it was then, data driven. They're using the available data, and then yes, judgment's required at some point. It still is, by the way. There's not like, the data doesn't tell you what to do, but the data empowers everything you do. And it's reliable. And you know it's the best you have. These are the elements that I believe go into a data-driven organization. You know that what you're doing is framed in, based upon, and clearly directed by every possible ounce of data that you have. Period. Is that the case in businesses? Almost universally, no. Why? And P.S., is that the case in our government? No. Why? Mm-hmm. The answer, I think, I don't know, but my thesis is that those who are responsible for running these organizations and who we elect to run our cities and states and country and operations, they don't understand. And they don't understand that they don't understand. And therefore, they don't know that it's available. They don't understand that data integrity is appropriate to demand. I'm not sure they could define, and it's okay, by the way, that they don't understand. They're not trained or educated or practiced in data integrity. But the idea is a fair thing for them to demand, even if they don't understand. And I believe that it's human psychology, insecurity, or perhaps avoidance of things you're not great at that leads to the idea, you know what, I don't know. Or I guess I'm sure I'm getting everything I need. And my response is, how are you sure? So to answer technically your question, a data-driven organization has data integrity. It's not limited by SAP or Oracle or whatever and you're not a victim of some system, nor are you at the effect of a system. Technology exists today. I mean, Uptake has spent over $500 million building technology such that it sits on top of everything you have, and it simply derives all of that data and organizes it with purity and clarity and integrity so you can use it. That's number one. You have data integrity, period. And you can ask the question, is there any amount of data that we have that we don't have access to easily? Yes or no? And the answer should be, everything that we have is available. And because the cloud and the cost of compute is now going up, like the quality of cloud provision and the cost, it's just like chips. Quality up, cost down. Mm-hmm. And the ability to plug into all your systems and rip and replace nothing. Don't tear anything out or change anybody's job. But overlay across everybody's job and every machine and every activity that you have, the derivation that extracts that data without changing their job, changing their workflows. Don't change anything, but get the data out. And as a leader, ask the question, what don't I have right now that we do have? And what blind spots do I create for myself by not mandating data integrity and data foundation that I could remediate with ease? It's remarkable if that's the question. If the question is curiosity versus a deference to inertia or the way things have always been, curiosity creates money. Curiosity creates efficiency, productivity, and with productivity becomes, my argument, it is a fact that with more productivity out of the same assets, we have less environmental consequence. And our people are going to be better educated because we're going to give them tools to get more out of the same asset, and it lets them be more intelligent in their activities. So we can bring people into this AI, data-driven age. We can have a net positive effect on the environmental consequence of industry, all by getting more out of the same. And all it takes is taking advantage of tools that have been built to work. And yes, I proudly say Uptake is one of the creators of tools that just work. doesn't require a 5-year, black hole of consulting. It just plugs into your assets and makes you smarter. And it gets you closer to a data-driven world.
I think one of the other gifts of this moment is the permission that's been given to leaders to say, I don't know. Because I think up until now,
Great.
expected to have the answers. And if you don't know, you just kind of don't say anything or you dodge it. And for the first time, we don't know. There's so much we don't know. We don't know how this virus is going to act. We don't know if our recovery is going to be U-shaped, V-shaped, W-shaped, XYZ-shaped. We don't know when we're going back to our corporate meetings, if Dreamforce is happening, if Lollapalooza is happening, when we're going back to our offices, if we're going to have another round of layoffs. We just don't know. And so when we don't have data and historicals and analogs for something as profound as what's going on right now, how do leaders have data-driven decision-making for what they need to do for the next 6 to 12 months? What's your best recommendation to them?
Well, I think what you say is so interesting. I am a vocal proponent of mentorship. When I talk to younger people, and I'm now 50, so I'm officially old. But I was the recipient of outrageously powerful mentorship from Sam Zell and many, many others. But Sam, for 33 years, has been a mentor, a true mentor. But I only bring up his name for the purpose of referencing how important mentors are to me. All the mentors that I cherish are people that tell me things that I don't know and that share what they see in terms of patterns. Because that's, I think, the game of learning is just pattern recognition, pattern exploration. And to your point, Margaret, what I can tell you is most true about the elders that I've, both wisdom elders and age elders that I've consulted in the last 6 months, they don't know.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to hear people who 100 times out of 100 tell me something that they know, tell me I don't know. And so with that, I think it opens up a really interesting way of reasoning. And this goes to first principles. If you want to talk about how we make decisions, more often than not, we make decisions based upon analogy. I tell you an example that I have from my past, and I make a decision, and I give you the clarity of why I decided it based upon the analogy. Here's how I did it before. Here's how some other company or other person does it. Therefore, do it that way. I'm the leader. Do it the way I request. There are not many analogies that are available at this moment. And therefore, the alternative to analogy-based reasoning, I believe, factually, it's first principles-based reasoning. What is unarguably true? Well, if I'm in the manufacturing or supply chain space, here's what's true. I own things. I own factories, machines, trucks, and equipment, period. First principle. 2 is I want to make sure that I get every ounce of what is available from those machines and that activity, and that I have as little reliability and productivity friction as humanly possible. How do I know? So the first principle is I am going to first do what I can do with what I have before I buy something else. If that's a first principle, I defer to knowledge versus analogy, and I must make the most I can. That's a way to reason for a leader to actually think about, how am I going to make a decision about this person who's part of my organization who says we must buy another truck? Why? Just tell me, are we getting what we can out of our existing trucks? Yes or no? Yes. How do you know? By the way, I can end this little riff on first principles, but a great way to practice first principles is ask the word why 5 times. So we should buy a truck. Why? Because we need it. Why? Well, because we have no more capacity. Why? Because we've used it all up. Then the next why says, how do you know what all is? Just show me the math that explains to me that our trucks are actually operating at their peak capacity. Oh, no, they're not. There are a lot of them in the shop. Why are they in the shop? Oh, we don't know. That's great that we don't know. Together, we can figure this one out. Now, by asking why with curiosity, now you're not defensive. I'm actually interested in understanding why. And the minute I can get you to be with me to explain, you don't really know why the batteries are running out or the engines are malfunctioning. Great, we can figure that out. Technology exists right now that didn't even exist 5 years ago that can tell us exactly what I could do ahead of time to ensure that nothing breaks down unexpectedly. Because if you say, what's the point of uptake? What we see and what is possible without argument, factually, is an operating world that does not break unexpectedly. Parts are where they should be. I got that we're not flying, but there aren't delays because a part's not available. That's what the world would look like if we were data-driven with precision around, the maintenance would be all precision proactive. And there would be very few trucks on the side of the road. By the way, all the trucks on the side of the road are evidence that something is not being done proactively. So I'm pretty passionate about this.
I know, I could talk to you forever. I want to be sure, though, that we get to all of our audience questions. We have some really great people who have a lot of questions for you, so I want to get into it. So first, from one of my favorite people, Chandra Brown. Thank you, Chandra, for being with us. For those of you who don't know her, she's the CEO of MXD. She said, Brad, totally agree about the importance of OT in our digital revolution. Can you speak to the importance of cybersecurity, which the manufacturing community is way behind on, versus other industries, especially with regards to OT on our factories? Also interested in your prediction on the future of manufacturing for the very small mom and pop shops out there.
I'll take the last one first. I think, look, what I said in relation to the George Floyd activity, one of my reactions was the opportunity of companies like Uptake and others is to do things that might be hard for larger companies to do them boldly, and hope that somebody copies first of all, we can take a risk and try to be better and do the best we can. And if we figure out some way to be proactively productive on an issue, on an activity, that's our job to be the first or to take a little bit of the risk. And so I'd say in regards to, bringing up that controversial or that topical issue, notwithstanding on the issue of manufacturing, small mom and pops, I would argue it's their role to be the first movers here. That's where entrepreneurs are excellent. They get in front of the big guys because they don't have the bureaucracy to deal with, number one. But number two, the idea of cybersecurity or the concept or the mandate in the world of OT and manufacturing, I agree, Chandra, wholeheartedly. It's, we're late to the game. I would offer that China and, stick with China. China is as a country, has prioritized advanced manufacturing in a way that puts us to shame. In other words, it's time for us as a country, as an entrepreneurial-oriented nation, to understand we must be excellent at manufacturing, supply chain, and all things related to industry. And we're going to get there through data and technology, not only and not necessarily through better machines themselves. So data and technology is the playground or the front line of improvement and optimization for other countries around the world. It's worth noting that in this country, data integrity, data leverage, OT optimization is not the headline, and it actually is in other countries headline material. So couldn't agree more. I do think it's not so much an existential. It's not a national existential issue, although if you increase the scope of the time frame to centuries, it might be, for all I know. But I do think competitively, it's an existential issue globally that our leading companies in the Global 2000 and beyond take OT seriously and give it a profit and productivity incentive that reports up to a COO and a CFO and clarifies the expectation of your OT and operational actors is to use technology and data to be better and not defer those decisions simply to the IT folks and hope that they prioritize manufacturing and machine and supply chain activity highly in their world. And the last thing on cybersecurity. In aviation, we see a world where every part has a lineage. So the reason that there's such extraordinary forensic reflection upon a crash or an issue is that every part has every person, whoever touched it, signs, logs, and is mandated to record what they did and when. I believe that same thought of audit quality activity around every part that's part of our utilities is coming soon. And I think that that will open up our eyes to how important it is to know who touches what part, where it came from, when it was put in. That's the beginning of better, in my opinion, around the cyber issues or the security issues of manufacturing and supply chain. So it's not just bad actors hacking in, it's every part that's used, and thinking about our utilities and energy generation activity, for example, or a manufacturing facility. Think about that as a big utility. It creates cars. How well do you know what the machines are that creates those cars, and that they are the right machines with the right parts, and that those that are operating those machines are the right people? That's going to become, I think, more common, if not mandated, sooner than we think.
So I want to transition to a question from Joe Nelligan. He's the CEO of Molex. He's also on my board. Thank you for being with us here today, Joe. So from your experience, what are just one or two critical success factors and pitfalls we should be thinking about as we embark on digital transformation initiatives?
Step one, a critical success factor is early wins that don't create this rip and replace activity. So they're possible, they're available. That's what we've all worked so hard to earn. And so a success factor is, let's start knocking things out one by one, versus radical. While what I'm talking about has, enterprise-wide manifestation, a critical success factor early is do something small. Do it. It allows for the clarity of fact. It can be done. We can extract data and then have it available that has a data integrity foundation that can then be manifested into an application that says, do this, don't do this, and we're better. And then let it happen. So that's the most important thing. Get over the resistance by getting over the resistance, and use the authority of a CEO to say it must happen, number one. Number two is, I believe in articulation, especially with a manufacturing organization like yours, by a leader, that OT and IT are different. Both involve ones and zeros, they both involve technology, but they don't have the same incentive structure in terms of why you are engaged with that type of technology. And so just having that clarity is a success metric, because it creates the conditions for better. And for such that they understand we are going to start taking action to get more out of what we already have, and capital deployed around our assets, and the amount of expense on an annual basis on maintenance can be controlled. And maybe a success factor by introducing that, it sort of opens the possibility we're going to see blind spots, and it's okay. What it means if we see blind spots is we're getting better. It doesn't mean we're bad. So clear articulation is a win to me, because it creates the possibility of incentives and the clarity of perhaps a small revisit to the organizational design. And then the former example was do something small. Find a company like Uptake that can literally plug in a product that just works without dependency or consulting manifestation, and prove to the organization how easy it can be if they just let it do what it does.
So kind of related to that then, we have a question from Nicholas. So what incentives and programs can organizations provide for employees throughout the enterprise to ensure long-term onboarding when adopting or modulating business intelligence technologies, such as AI, predictive modeling, and implementing digital transformation? How do you ensure that employees are open to change?
Well, an easy one. What incentive did we have? I'll answer a question with a question. What incentive did we have when?
That's the lesson today.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The best answers manifest from the best questions, not the best solutions. I got that wrong, I'm sure. But when we were exposed to email, there was somebody, or maybe lots of people, that said, I don't believe in email. I believe in typewriters. I just like typing a memo and handing it to you, or putting it in the interoffice basket. Remember those? What do we do? At some point, they had to learn. Period. They just had to learn what email is, and we had to train them how email works. End of story. The entire story. Meaning, how much are we exposing those who touch machines, inventory, trucks, maintenance, things? Think about how many of the people that are part of a utility have been exposed to data enriched decisions. How many of those in the operational functions really have seen a war room such that it can let them be precisely better? And how many of the people that service pumps and valves and turbines, et cetera, on the front line, how much have they been exposed to applications that explain to them, this is exactly what you should do, versus opening it up and exploring around? How about this amazing reality that those people who have spent their careers opening things up to see things can now have the advantage of vibration data, temperature data, velocity data, relational data, so that before they get there, they've got the health chart of that machine, and they can be more precision operators versus crude, our doctors don't open us up to see what's going on. They take x-rays and they take our pulse. We can do the same thing with our machines, and we choose at this point not to. We are choosing to not do things, and the expense of that choice, it's not like doing nothing is not nothing, is I guess maybe the punchline of this whole conversation. Doing nothing is something. And the something sounds like I am going to choose to ignore or not act on what will certainly make me better. I'd like to know how it'll make me better so I can know what I'm choosing to not do. And in the case of our people, I'm going to choose to not educate my people with very friendly online lessons about things like machine learning and AI enhanced insight about assets, and operating a locomotive with the advantage of predictive insight based upon months of behavior of that locomotive. I'm going to choose to not expose my engineers who are on the locomotive. I'm going to not show them all the things they could be doing. That's a choice we're making. And so the remediation starts with just simple education. Before we do anything else, here's what it is. And again, part of what we do at Uptake is we have an education program, simple online education to say, for all the operators, and they get certified. You get a certificate that you're now certified in AI and machine learning based operations or maintenance. These are some of.
Yeah. Before we wrap, we have an announcement, right? So I want to get into it. So as part of Brad and Uptake's investment in Chicago and their obvious focus on the manufacturing sector, he is stepping in to fill a gap that we have had at the Executives Club for a while now. So when I got here a year ago, as many of our members know, our forums are one of the hallmarks of the club. And I thought it was a real miss that we did not have one on anything related to manufacturing, supply chain, logistics, given that this is Chicago. And when I mentioned this to Brad, he immediately raised his hand and offered to start one for us. So this is our official announcement of our newest forum, which is going to be chaired by Brad and Uptake. Thank you, Brad, so much for doing this. This has been something I've wanted to do for a year, and thank you for taking the helm. It's really exciting. Do you want to share anything about your vision for the forum, the types of conversation, education, resources that members should expect?
Sure. So it's our privilege. I mean, the Executives Club has has played its role really boldly and powerfully in our community. And the role, to me, at its core is connectivity and collaboration. So we can do the best we can do. We can't do more than we can do, but at least are we doing, maybe that's another framework of our conversation today. It's like, can you do everything you can do? If you get that much done, you've done a lot. In that spirit, the framing of a series of connectivity exercises, connectivity forums and events around supply chain manufacturing and the like seem to be a clear, as Margaret said, a clear, not a miss, but a blind spot. And so when we talked about it, I said, we'd be delighted, and I'd be delighted to step in and help facilitate. And it's interesting, just like when I started Chicago Ideas Week, the motive fundamentally was a more connected community. That might sound corny or it might sound cliche, but I think it matters. And what that's proven to me at Chicago Ideas is it matters. Good things happen when people are more easily connected. And so too, with what we're going to be leaning into and acting on, Margaret, the goal is a more connected community that more clearly leverages its strengths, that makes it clear to the world, at least we know that we have more we can do without going far. We've got this manufacturing base, this supply. This is one of the core nexus points in our country. Are we leveraging it as much as we can? I think no. And so I think that more active connectivity between the leaders of our community will inevitably result in goodness. The fun part is I'm not sure I can describe or define exactly what that goodness looks like, but let's just say it opens up possibility, which in my book, possibility is good. That's a first principle. Possibility is a good thing.
This is great. We're so excited. Thank you. I know we're a little over time. Thank you for everyone hanging in with us. I see that the numbers didn't really go down even though we went past 1. So thank you all. Thank you, Brad, for being here with us. I know we didn't get to everyone's questions. I'm sorry. There were so many. I did the best we can. And we're going to send out more information about the forum, and we'll also send the recording to this interview so you can share it. And I wish you all a wonderful weekend.